So funk bass lines are very, very important part of any sort of funk tune, and bass and funk go really, really well together. So I wanted to tell you how you can make funk bass lines, as sometimes you're going to get a jam on, let's say, like B flat 7, for example. What do you do if someone says, oh, hey, let's just jam, and then you don't know what to do? So let's get into it. So the example I gave there is over a B flat 7. If you're doing a jam on a B flat 7, for example, then you need to know the notes that make up B flat 7, and this is where it comes into knowing chord tones and chord notes and whatnot. But you don't necessarily need to know that unless they specifically call it. If they say, oh, let's do a jam over like a 1/4 in B flat, then you need to know what a 1/4 in B flat is. But if someone says, hey, let's just jam, play something that sounds good, you can start anywhere, but it's still useful to know the shapes. So I have put a PDF down in the description, but the basic things are like major triad, minor triad, diminished triad, and then augmented triad, except I've put the fingering like that because it's a bit awkward to do it. That massive fret stretch, you can just do it like that. So if you know those 4 triads, then you've got some bass stuff, but I also put some pentatonics down in there as well, because pentatonics are just an amazing thing for funk. So let's say we've got a B flat 7, for example. So once you know your chord tones, you know your notes in B flat 7, you can include the 4 as well. I haven't put the 4 in there. So there's your B flat 7, and your important notes are your 7, 3 and 1, and you can hear it's quite dissonant between the 7 and the 3rd, and that's what gives it that 70 sound. But it's not all just about the notes. You can play all your notes and you can play a funk bass line that is so dull like this. Like this is more of like a bluesy walking bass line. That's not going to work for a funk tune, and rhythm is really important here. And this goes for making any bass line, whether you know the theory, whether you don't know the theory, for whatever jam you're doing. Knowing just some good rhythm is great, and knowing some rhythmic concepts. Like if you take the Jacob Pastorius tune Come On Come Over, it's a pretty good funk bass line. Like that's got rhythm, it's got bounce to it, and that bounce and that rhythm is what makes that bass line so good. The Chicken is actually a better example for over a B flat 7. Except I played it a bit poorly there at the end. But that's besides the point. The Chicken is another great example of a bass line, and it tends to be 16th notes are what sort of make things sound funky, because the tempos, it's not like jazz where you've got your fast notes are your quavers and it's like 240 BPM quick. Funk tends to be the sort of low mid 100s at most if it's really fast, but it tends to be around 100 BPM, and you've got 16ths, which are usually about this speed. And getting your 16ths really even is a very important thing, and it's 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. That's a little bit faster than 100 BPM, I think. If you want to practice stuff like that, by the way, a great tune for that is Deantown by Wolfpack. It's got some great stuff later on in the tune as well, but you've also got lots of getting even 16ths. That was a really out of tune C sharp. But there's literally a whole section which is just like this. If you haven't heard the tune, then I'll leave a link in that in the description, because it is an absolutely wonderful funk tune, and there's some great bassline concepts in there. So that is a good one to learn. So learning pieces is also a really great way to make your funk bassline sound good. It doesn't matter if in a jam you steal a bassline from another tune. Like, let's say we're doing that jam in B flat again, and I want to take the Come On Come Over bassline, so I just move it to B flat. And you can see it still works there. And knowing just what the shape is and then moving it around the fretboard works great. And if you wanted something, you know, maybe like C minor, pentatonic-y. You could do something a bit like that, something with a bit more space and a bit more bounce, or you could do, you know, some more sort of typical funk thing where you can either, there's two approaches with funk which I think work really well, and one of them is just, it's basically just 16th notes constantly, and when there aren't notes, they're ghost notes, so you're basically doing this all the time on whatever string you're playing it on. But the bass line, like in the case of the chicken, it's slightly different. Come On Come Over is a bit more like it. Like you're sort of just doing that all the time and getting ghost notes in between, and that's one way you can get some good funk going. But there's also a lot of good funk in space as well, and getting a bit of bounce. And obviously there's more structure when you've got other things going on. If you just listen to bass lines by themselves, generally for funk stuff, or if you're getting, you know, started with funk stuff, and that bass line perhaps wasn't the best example to use, just something to make up on the spot, but you can always practice this in your free time. Just make bass lines and see if you can make ones that sound good, you know, with shapes. Let's perhaps do another example of a C7 sort of stuff. That's perhaps a better example for a good funk bass line, and that's sort of loosely that Come On Come Over shape. I always come back to that for funk stuff. It's so good. Learn some tunes and get some good funk stuff there, like funk shape wise. Like you can take very simple shapes as well, just triads, and that's sort of what I used for the previous example that didn't work so well. But you can also quote things from other tunes as well. There's all sorts of things that you can do to go with funk tunes, funk bass lines and whatnot. But it tends to be that, you know, they pop quite a lot, and the rhythm has to be interesting, essentially. If you're playing out of time and all over the place in some cases, and, you know, things don't line up where they should, where it feels like they should line up. Like if there's a notable thing, let's say if I'm doing that bass line in C7, if I've got like a walk up like that, it's got to hit that every single time, because I can't like leave it perhaps a bit too long. In that example it might work as well, but if you do it inconsistently, if you're inconsistent in your phrasing and your timing, then it doesn't make sense. So if we take, let's take this as an example of one that's we'll set it up and then I'll mess it up the second time. That was inconsistent because I left it longer, and perhaps that's what you might want for a thing. But if there's a notable or anything like that, or anything that's a bit more notable like that, that sticks out and that pops, and obviously that first note of the bass line, keep that consistent and keep that driving through the tune. You can change like the phrasing of it. Like if first time you're going, like you can change that around and go like, that's fine, but always come back to an idea. And I find that's what makes funk the way it is. There's interesting rhythm, interesting ideas, interesting concepts, but it always will come back to some core idea. So once you've got some basic theory knowledge, or you've learned some funk tunes, and learn some shapes. That might be a better way if you don't like delving into all the theory stuff. I would strongly recommend Come On Come Over. Absolutely amazing tune for learning funk stuff. So get some shapes down that you like, or get some theory knowledge down as well. All of that works and helps. And then try and make some interesting rhythms, interesting bass lines, and try and find a key idea that works well. If you're wondering what things like that are, it's just a walk up. So start 2 frets down before the note that you want. In this case, we're doing a C7y thing. So I'm going B flat, B, C, just in that way. And you can do walk downs as well. If I was going to go to F, I could go G, F sharp, F. But it tends to be like, if you're, let's say we've got a 1-4, and we use an example for that. So if we're on let's stay on that C7. Like, you get ideas like that come through if you go to the 4 from. So if you take a 1, then we're going to walk up to the 1. But if we're going to the 4, we'll walk down to the 4. In this case, I find that works better than walking back to the 1. You can walk down to the 1 though, but I tend to use it if I'm walking down to the 4. So if we take an example here, I'll do a walk up to the 1 and walk down to the 4. Like, you can do something like that, and you see, like, then you can go back to that shape. But equally, you could, you know, do a walk up to the 4 and walk down to the 1. So I'll show you an example of that using the same bass line. You can see which one you prefer. And then walk up to the 1 at the end. You can sort of see it's harder going by yourself and playing by ear, and to be honest, I should practice this more as well. I don't do as much funk stuff, but you know, as always, practice what you preach. But essentially, take some rhythmic ideas around, play around with things. Some things will work, some things won't work, some things will sound much better than others. Keep the things that sound good, and don't keep the things which don't sound good to you, and then over time you'll develop better and better funk bass lines. And again, you know, it all comes down to these great shapes and these chromatic approaches and stuff like that that makes the funky stuff sound good. So I hope that's been in some way informational to you. It might have been a mess of ideas all over there, but that is what music is for you. So either way, make some good funk bass lines, see what you can come up with, because I'm sure you can come up with some great stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.